Did you know a new AI model just basically finished a complex software engineering job all by itself? Ran for like 7 hours straight.
Wow, 7 hours autonomously.
Yeah. Or picture this. An AI that doesn't just write code, but can, actually run it safely to check its own work.
Before even showing it to you.
Exactly. That's the kind of leap we're digging into today. Welcome to the deep dive. We take your sources, articles, reports, all that stuff, and boil them down to what you really need to know. Get you informed fast. So today's deep dive, it's all about Anthropic's big new release, Claude 4. We've waded through quite a stack of documents, technical details, benchmarks, industry reactions, safety stuff, the works.
Yeah, there's a lot there. And our goal really is to cut through that noise for you.
Yeah.
Help you understand what Claude 4 actually is, why it's making waves in this, very crowded AI space right now.
And figure out the opportunities, the challenges, what it means if you actually want to use it. And hey, if you find this useful, hitting that like button and subscribing, it genuinely helps us make more of these deep dives for you.
Definitely appreciate it.
Okay, let's get into it. So, the big news dropped May 22nd, 2025. Anthropic launches Claude 4.
Right into a pretty hot market, yeah. You've got OpenAI's GPT 4.1 out there, Google's Gemini 2.5. It's competitive.
Very. And what's interesting right off the bat is it's not just one model they release.
No, that's key. It's two distinct models, Claude Opus 4 and Claude Sonnet 4.
Okay.
They share, the same core advancements in coding, reasoning, and this kind of agent-like capability we mentioned.
Right, the AI being able to plan and execute steps.
Exactly. But they're tuned for different things, different use cases.
So Opus 4, that's the top dog, the most powerful one.
That seems to be the idea. Opus 4 is positioned as the flagship. It's aimed at the really complex, demanding tasks, things that need sustained reasoning over, a long time.
And Sonnet 4?
Sonnet 4 is framed as a major upgrade to their previous model, Claude 3.7. It's trying to strike a balance between, really high performance and efficiency, making it more accessible.
Okay, so power versus balanced efficiency. And I notice reading through everything, Anthropic keeps hitting this theme. Pushing boundaries, yes, but also really focusing hard on safety and interpretability, making it understandable.
Absolutely. That's a core message with this release. Pushing the capabilities, sure, but doing it responsibly. That dual focus is central.
All right, let's properly meet these models then. Tell me more about Claude Opus 4. What really makes it stand out?
Opus 4 is definitely the powerhouse. Anthropic's actually calling it the world's best coding model, which is, a bold claim.
A very bold claim. Does the evidence back that up?
Well, the sources suggest it really does excel at complex programming, especially projects that take time, need sustained effort. It's built to work for hours without losing the thread.
Hours. Wow. That connects back to that 7-hour coding task you mentioned.
Exactly. That's a prime example. And early feedback seems strong. Cursor IDE, for instance, called it state-of-the-art for coding and a leap forward in complex code-based understanding.
So if you have a really tough, complex coding job or deep research, heavy data analysis, Opus 4 is the one.
That's the idea. It's for the brainbuster tasks. The trade-off, naturally, is it costs more computationally and might be a bit slower, have higher latency.
Okay, makes sense. Opus for mission critical. What about Sonnet 4 then? Is it just less good?
Not really less good. More like optimized differently. Think of it as the versatile workhorse. It's described as a significant upgrade to Claude Sonnet 3.7. So it inherits a lot of Opus's power, but is tuned for efficiency.
So maybe not quite the absolute peak performance of Opus on every complex task, but faster, cheaper, and still very, very capable.
Precisely. They highlight its enhanced steerability. Basically, it's better at following really specific, detailed instructions, which is huge for practical applications, right?
Yeah, that matters a lot in the real world.
And here's a really interesting detail. Even though it's optimized for efficiency, it still gets state-of-the-art results on coding benchmarks. The sources actually note it slightly beat Opus on one specific coding test.
Wait, really? Sonnet 4 beat the flagship Opus 4 on a coding benchmark?
Yeah, surprising, isn't it? It really highlights that Sonnet isn't just Opus Lite. It's incredibly capable in its own right, just tuned for practicality. Anthropic calls it the optimal mix of capability and practicality.
Okay.
So it's great for interactive tools, things that need to scale up where cost and speed matter more. So you get this choice, maximum power with Opus, or this really balanced, high-performing efficiency with Sonnet. both built on that core Claude 4 tech.
Okay, I get the distinction now. Opus for the mountains, Sonnet for the everyday heavy lifting, but still really strong lifting. So how do they do all this? What's under the hood? The technical innovations?
A really distinctive feature they talk about is this hybrid reasoning
The
architecture.
reasoning. Okay.
It basically means the model can operate in two modes. There's a standard mode for, like, near instant responses, quick questions, simple prompts.
Right.
But then there's this special mode for extended deep thinking when it encounters a complex task.
So the AI itself figures out, okay, this needs more thought.
Exactly. It can internally switch gears. And when it goes into that deep thinking mode, it can do more complex stuff like break down the problem, perform chained reasoning steps. And this is crucial. It can decide to use external tools.
Ah, okay. And it handles more information in that mode too.
Yeah, significantly more context. Up to 64,000 tokens, which is, a lot, lets it process large documents or keep track of long conversations much better.
It sounds like the AI literally pausing to think harder, maybe grab a coffee, metaphorically speaking.
That's a pretty good way to put it. And the tool use part is a big deal. It's called tool-driven reasoning, still in beta, apparently. The AI doesn't just suggest using a tool. It can decide itself to use things like a web search.
Really? It can search the web during its thought process.
Yeah, via a safe API. Or it can run Python code in a secure sandbox environment. Or even call out to an external API you might connect it to.
Whoa. So it can run calculations or look up current info while it's working on a response. That breaks it out of just relying on its training data.
Exactly. That's the point. It improves accuracy massively for certain tasks, data analysis, coding queries, anything needing up-to-date info. And get this, in that deep thinking mode, it can apparently even use multiple tools in parallel.
Like a little research assistant juggling tasks.
Sort of, yeah. Multitasking AI.
Okay, that's impressive. What about memory? AI forgetting stuff halfway through a long chat is a common frustration.
They've made big strides there, too, it seems. They call it long-term memory, and it's linked to a new Files API.
Files API.
Yeah. Developers can basically allow the AI to store important bits of information summaries, results from previous chats, that kind of thing, in designated memory files. These files persist across different sessions.
So you can give the AI like a notebook to remember things.
That's a perfect analogy. The sources mentioned an example where Opus 4 created a guide for a text adventure game and stored the map and progress in one of these files.
That would make a huge difference.
Apparently it does. Anthropic claims a 65% reduction in the AI taking shortcuts or losing track on long tasks compared to the previous model, 3.7.
65% better at staying on task. That's huge.
It really enables much more complex multi-session interactions, useful for building those persistent AI agents.
Definitely. Anything else major on the tech side?
One more thing, prompt caching. It lets developers cache prompts for up to an hour.
Why is that useful?
For anything iterative, like an agent taking multiple turns or refining an answer, you don't have to resend the entire context each time. It saves on latency, makes it faster, and importantly, saves on cost because you're processing fewer tokens.
Okay, so smart ways to think, use tools, remember stuff, and be efficient. Let's talk results. How does this stack up against the competition? What do the benchmarks actually say?
Right, the numbers. Well, Claude 4, both models really are putting up some top-tier results, especially in coding.
Okay, where are they really shining?
On SWE-bench verified, which is known to be a tough software engineering benchmark, Opus 4 scored around 72.5%, and Sonnet 4 was right there with it, 72.7%.
Wow, and how does that compare?
Well, their previous model, Claude 3.7, was around 62.3%. And the sources compared to GPT 4.1, which was reported around 54.6% on that test. So it's a pretty significant lead they've opened up there.
Okay, that's a clear win for coding shown in the benchmarks.
Definitely. And it's not just that one. On Terminal Bench, which tests how well the AI can use a command line to do coding tasks, like an agent.
Right, more practical coding.
Yeah. Opus 4 hit 43.2%. The comparisons were around 30% for GPT 4.1 and 25% for Gemini 2.5. Sonnet 4 also did well there, 35.5%.
So the big takeaway from the benchmarks, Claude 4 is, at least right now, the standout for coding and these more complex agent-like tasks that involve sequences of actions.
That seems to be the clear message from the data, yes. They're also strong in general reasoning and knowledge tests like GPKA Diamond, which is like graduate-level Q&A, and MMLU for multilingual knowledge. They're generally on par or slightly ahead of the competition there, especially when the deep thinking mode kicks in. Opus 4 got up to about 88.8% on MMLU.
But are there areas where other models still have an edge? It can't be the best at everything.
Right, good point. Visual reasoning is one area mentioned. On tests like MMMU that involve understanding images, Opus 4 scores around 76-77% were behind Gemini 2.5 at nearly 80%, and some OpenAI vision models closer to 83%. Claude 4 is primarily text-focused right now.
Okay, so vision is still an edge for others. Anywhere else?
High school math, specifically the AME 2025 benchmark. Initially, Opus 4's score from a single pass, about 75.5%, trailed an older GPT-4 score, which was around 89%.
Oh, interesting. So math is still a challenge.
Well, yes and no. This is where it gets really fascinating. When Opus 4 used its new toolkit, the ability to run code, its rated score on that same math benchmark jumped to 90%.
It beat the GPT-4 score.
Slightly overtook it, yeah. Which perfectly demonstrates the power of that extended reasoning and tool use. It might not get it right instantly, but it can work through the problem using computation, like a person would use a calculator or scratchpad.
That's a really important distinction. It's not just about the first guess, but the ability to reason and use tools to get to the right answer.
Exactly, and that seems to apply more broadly to agentic tasks. The sources mention Claude 4 leading on SWE-bench, another agent benchmark, hitting over 80% success where OpenAI models were more in the 68-70% range.
Okay, so benchmarks show a significant leap, especially coding and complex reasoning, even if not uniformly top everywhere on first pass. What about the real world, though? Are companies actually using this yet? What are they saying?
Oh yeah, the industry reaction seems really strong. Lots of rapid integration happening. Companies were clearly eager for this.
Like who? Any big names?
GitHub. They're putting Sonnet 4 into GitHub Copilot. They specifically mentioned it soars in agentic scenarios.
Wow, GitHub Copilot. That's huge. Millions of developers use that. That's a massive vote of confidence.
It really is. Another coding platform, Replit, said Opus 4 brings improved precision and handles complex changes across multiple files much better. Suggests it's good with larger code bases.
Okay.
And the company behind Square, they found Opus 4 was actually the first model to boost code quality during editing and debugging in their internal tools.
Boosting quality. Not just speed, but making the code better. That sounds more like a collaborator.
That's the feeling, yeah. And remember that 7-hour task, that was Rakuten. They publicly confirmed Opus 4 did a 7-hour autonomous code refactoring project successfully. That kind of sustained automation is, well, it's new.
7 hours straight on its own. That really does change the game for what you might automate.
Absolutely. Another AI company, Cognition, said Opus 4 excels at solving complex challenges that other models can't. Handles tricky steps others stumble on.
Okay, so lots of positive feedback on Opus 4 for complex tasks. What about Sonnet 4, the balanced one?
Good feedback there, too. Users like Manus mentioned it's better at following complex instructions, clear reasoning, and aesthetic outputs.
Aesthetic outputs, like well-formatted code.
Presumably, yeah.
Yeah.
And easier to understand why it did something that clear reasoning part.
Yeah.
Another company, Agent, found Sonnet 4 excels at autonomous multi-feature app development and cut navigation errors in code bases way down.
Cutting errors is always good.
Definitely. SourceGraph just called it a substantial leap in software development. And Augment actually picked Sonnet 4 as their primary model because it had higher success rates and made more precise code edits for their use case.
Interesting, choosing Sonnet over Opus for precision. And it helps that it was available widely from day one, right? On Anthropic's API, AWS, Bedrock, Google Cloud.
Huge factor for adoption speed, yeah. So the overall picture from early users is pretty clear. They're seeing real benefits, more precision, better handling of complex stuff, sticking to the task, fewer mistakes. It's getting plugged into real products and workflows.
Okay, it's powerful. Companies are excited. But power brings responsibility. Anthropic always emphasizes safety. What's the story there with Claude 4?
Yeah, safety, governance, interpretability. That focus is still very much there, maybe even more prominent given the increased capabilities. For Opus 4 specifically, they proactively triggered what they call AI Safety Level 3, ASL3.
ASL3, what does that mean in practice?
As part of their internal responsible scaling policy, it means stricter internal security around the model itself and tighter controls on how it can be deployed, specifically targeting potentially dangerous misuse.
Like what kind of misuse?
The sources explicitly mention trying to prevent it from helping develop CBRN weapons, chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear stuff. So Opus 4 has very targeted refusals for those high-risk areas, but shouldn't be overly restrictive otherwise.
And why ASL3 just for Opus?
Their reasoning is that with Opus 4's advanced knowledge, especially in technical fields, they cannot clearly rule out ASL3 risks. So they decided to be cautious and apply the stricter controls. Sonnet 4 is under their standard ASL2, like the previous model.
That's pretty notable. A company voluntarily putting stricter limits on its own top model based on potential risk.
It is. It sets a precedent. Beyond that, they talk about behavioral safety. They claim the Claude 4 models are 65% less likely to take shortcuts or try to exploit loopholes compared to 3.7.
So, more honest, less likely to try and game the system or find workarounds.
That's the goal. More resistant to jailbreaking attempts, better refusal consistency. They mention a new strong reject mechanism for that. They apparently did extensive testing for things like deception, tool misuse, following harmful instructions, and found no signs of dangerous autonomous goal-seeking.
Okay, so it behaves better. What about understanding why it does what it does? Interpretability.
Improvements there too. During that deep thinking mode, it can provide thinking summaries. Instead of just a long, messy chain of thought log, it gives you a narrated summary of its reasoning steps. Much easier to follow for complex tasks.
Like cliff notes for the AI's thought process.
Huh, yeah, something like that. And for developers needing the full details, there's a developer mode to see the raw reasoning and tool logs. Users are also saying the outputs just seem better organized, with clearer explanations built in.
So more powerful, but also more constrained, more transparent. It's a tricky balance they're aiming for.
Definitely. They seem to be trying to show how you can scale AI capabilities while also scaling up the safety and interpretability features alongside them.
Okay, let's zoom out. We've seen the tech, the performance, the reactions, the safety. What does this all mean? For you, the listener, for the field, what are the big opportunities here, and what risks should we still keep in mind?
The opportunities are pretty significant, I think,
Yeah.
especially around AI agents and automation. You combine that sustained focus, the tool use, the better memory, the top-tier coding, and suddenly you can imagine AI tackling much more complex workflows autonomously.
Like what kind of workflows?
Things like large-scale software refactoring, like Rakuten did, sophisticated data analysis, where it pulls data, processes it, and writes a report, acting as a genuine research assistant that can gather info, synthesize it, and keep track over time.
It feels like a shift from AI as a tool for specific tasks to AI as a potential partner for complex projects.
That's a great way to put it. It's a step towards this idea of a virtual collaborator, an AI that can work alongside you for days or weeks on something substantial, remembering the context. That could really change things in science, finance, education, anywhere dealing with complexity.
That potential is exciting, but what about the flip side? The risks and challenges.
They're definitely still there. First, AI can still make mistakes, hallucinations, errors. They happen, especially on novel or really tricky problems. Human oversight is absolutely non-negotiable. You have to treat the output, especially critical code or analysis, as a draft that needs checking.
Right. Don't trust blindly.
Never. Second, misuse. A model that's great at coding could potentially be used to create malware or find exploits more easily. Anthropic has filters, sure, but organizations using it need their own safeguards and monitoring.
Makes sense. Internal threats are real too.
Yeah, and tool use safety is crucial. Anthropic sandboxes the Python execution, which is good. But if you connect Claude to your internal systems or external APIs, you need to be really careful about what permissions you give it. Least privilege principle is key.
Don't give the AI the keys to the kingdom unintentionally.
Exactly. Then there's cost. We mentioned Opus 4 is pricey. Using that deep thinking mode a lot or feeding it huge amounts of context constantly, it can get expensive fast. Yeah. Careful planning and monitoring are needed.
So you need to be strategic about when and how you use the most powerful features.
For sure. And finally, the human element. Over-reliance or skill atrophy. If developers just let the AI do everything without understanding it, their own skills could fade over time. Maintaining code reviews, understanding the why, that remains important.
And keeping up with Anthropic's policies as they evolve, like that ASL3 designation.
Right. It's a moving target.
Yep.
So yeah, huge potential, but it needs careful, responsible management and deployment. The tools are powerful, but the responsibility ultimately lies with the user.
Okay, this is super helpful context. So for teams or individuals looking at this thinking, maybe we should try Claude 4, what are the key practical takeaways, the advice distilled from the sources?
First off, choose the right model. Don't just automatically reach for Opus 4 because it's the best. Opus is for the absolute hardest, most complex stuff. For most things, Sonnet 4 is likely the better choice, faster, cheaper, still incredibly capable. Maybe start with Sonnet and only bring in Opus when Sonnet struggles.
Optimize for the common case. Escalate when needed. Got it.
Right. Second, use those hybrid modes wisely. That deep thinking is powerful but resource intensive. Use it selectively for tasks that genuinely need that depth. For quick questions, stick to the instant mode. And when you use the big 64K context window, fill it with relevant info, not just noise.
Be deliberate about complexity. And those new tools.
Yes. Embrace the new API tools. The code execution, the MCP connector for APIs, the files API for memory, prompt caching. These aren't just gimmicks. They let the AI do things it couldn't before and can save you a ton of custom coding. Learn how they work, understand their costs and benefits.
How about integrating it into actual work?
Key point. Integrate into workflows. Don't just use it in a vacuum. Leverage the official tools like the Claude Code extension, IDE plugins, VS Code, JetBrains, the SDK, that GitHub app, but do it safely. Maybe start with suggestions. Require human approval for changes, especially initially.
So ease into it. Don't just flip a switch. Pilot projects, maybe.
Exactly. Start with pilot projects. Test it in one specific area first.
Yeah.
Measure the impact, speed, quality, developer feedback. Find out where it works well and where it stumbles before you roll it out broadly.
Learn before you leap. What else?
Mind the safety guidelines. Understand Anthropic's policies, but also implement your own checks and balances if needed. Know how the model handles refusals. Keep a human in the loop for anything high stakes.
And keep an eye on the bill.
Always. Optimize prompts and monitor costs. Write clear, specific prompts. Use Sonnet or free tiers for prototyping and testing. Use prompt caching where it makes sense. Especially with Opus, you need to be mindful of usage to control costs. And finally, super important, train your team.
Train them on what specifically?
On what the models can do well, what their limitations are, how to write effective prompts, and critically, how to verify the output. Foster a mindset of AI as a collaborator, not an oracle.
That's really solid practical advice. Okay, so wrapping up, Claude 4, both Opus and Sonnet, it really does feel like a significant step change, particularly that dominance in coding, the sustained reasoning, the agent capabilities. It's a seriously powerful toolkit, but one designed with pretty advanced safety considerations.
Yeah, it feels like it's pushing AI much closer to that vision of a true virtual collaborator. Less of a simple tool, more of a partner for complex work.
So here's a thought to leave you with. Given that Claude 4 can think for hours, use tools, remember things across conversations, what project or challenge, maybe something you thought was impossible before in your work, your research, or just something you're curious about, what could you now tackle with an AI partner like this? And how might that change how we think about collaborating, not just human to human, but human to AI? Lots to think about there. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.